We are back on the Marching to Madness College Basketball Podcast with my good friend, Coach Donnie Tyndall of the Chipola JC Indians. They're 27-2 right now. He's taken the Indians to the Final Four the last 2 years. They have gone 8-2 over their last 10 games and won 5 in a row. A win at Tallahassee Community College on Saturday will give the Indians the outright title of the Panhandle Conference. Coach, welcome, man. Good to see you.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Ken. It's great to see you. It's been a long time, buddy, but it's great to see you, and I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you, Coach. Hey, talk about your team. You were number one in the nation there for a while, and you put together a 21-0 start.
Well, you know, our team the last 3 years, this is my third season, Coach, and we've had great success. The Panhandle Conference here in the state of Florida is the best conference in the country, bar none. And then the region, which includes the entire state of Florida, is the best region in the country. It's been proven year in and year out. And this is our third year. We've won the Panhandle all 3 years. We won the state the first 2 years. And we went to the Final Four in the national tournament each of the first 2 years. We've literally been probably one play away from being back-to-back national champions. But I feel like this year's team is a little bit different than the first 2 years' team, and that we're deeper, we're a little more athletic, we're probably better offensively than the two previous teams. Now, I don't know if we have the physicality and toughness and grit up front on our front line that we had the first 2 years, but we have a nice team. You know, Chipola's had great coaches, great players, and great teams for many, many years. And we started 21-0, as you mentioned, which was the best start in the history of the program, which was pretty cool. And we had a bad week. We lost against Tallahassee, that we won on a Wednesday against Pensacola, and we lost the next Saturday against Northwest at Northwest. So the only two losses we've had came in kind of a rough week for us, if you will. Both were on the road against great teams. So other than that, we've been pretty good all season long, and hopefully we're hitting our stride here as we head into the state tournament action.
Coach, what are some of the intangibles that have allowed the Indians to be so effective, not just this year, but the last two plus this year?
Well, I think you got to start with the players. Obviously, you're not going to have a good program if you don't have great players. And, you know, when you look in my first 2 years, we've got a kid, Naheem McLeod, who starts at Florida State, Jaden Zachary, who starts at Boston College, Naquan Tomlin, who starts at Kansas State. And then we have several other players at really good schools like Old Dominion, Sanford, Niagara. You can go down the list. So Buffalo, we have really good players across the country in Division I, 11 total. And when you have good players, that helps you win a lot of games. But with that being said, there's great competition in this conference. You know, there's high major players at other schools as well that are now in Division I. So it hasn't been easy. But you have to start with the good players, and then the second part of that is always the buy-in. You know, at this level, you know, I spent 4 years in the NBA/G League, and you know, people say the G League is kind of the league no one wants to be in. Everyone's trying to get to the NBA, you know, and I kind of compare this to the G League, and the fact that these kids are coming to Chipola to do well, but they're obviously trying to do well so they can move up and move on to the Division I level. And so when you're trying to motivate kids to win and play the right way, as opposed to just getting their stats or putting up big numbers, there's a balancing act there. You want kids to be aggressive and do well so they can enhance their opportunities, but it's also got to be within the team concept. So there's a balancing act, and give our players in this program a lot of credit. They put the team first, and in doing that, these guys have created a lot of great opportunities for themselves over the last couple of years. And I feel like we have several players this year that'll do the same thing.
This is a really high-scoring team. It averages 80.3 points per game. You shoot 46.3% from the floor. Talk about your offensive philosophy, and then how do you fuel that attack so prevalently?
Well, we don't talk about offense over here, Coach. We've been number one in the country in defense the last 2 years. We're number one in the country in defense currently this year. So we don't talk about offense. We just defend and rebound. But with that being said, My 4 years in the NBA and the G League level really helped me grow as an offensive coach. I've always liked to think people thought of me as a good X and O tactician type coach, but my 4 years in the NBA helped me tremendously, particularly on the offensive side of the ball in regard to spacing and playing basically 4-around-1 and pick and rolls and angles of pick and rolls and all those things that come with NBA basketball. Not everything translates, Ken, as you can imagine, but some of it does. And I think we've had a nice mix of adding some things I learned and liked and understand better now from the NBA game into the college game. And so far, knock on wood, it's been successful.
Your 3-point game has been successful as well. I was curious about how do you go about setting up your shooters and finding them inside an offense? I'm offensive. I got to admit, not offensive, but offensive.
Well, I think this obviously you got to recruit good shooters, but then there's also the balancing act of making sure guys take good, clean looks out of the context of the offense, but letting guys play with some freedom and some confidence so that they're not reluctant to shoot the ball. And I think as hard as I am on my guys defensively and holding them accountable, if you don't defend, you're not going to play. If you don't rebound it, you're not going to play. We do give guys some freedom at the offensive end of the floor. And we have a very unselfish team. So guys, our term kind of is we turn down good ones for great ones. And we turn down a lot of good open shots because we're unselfish. We share the ball, and then we end up getting great shots. And when you got good shooters taking great shots, your percentage is usually going to reflect that. And so far this year, it's done that. We just got to stay. We don't have to stay hot. We got to at least stay warm, Coach, for the next 6, 8, 10 games, however long it is.
Now, here's the defensive reflection. You're holding your opponents to 38.1% at 63.7 points. So you outscore your opponents by nearly 17 a game.
Yeah, and I think, like I mentioned earlier, a big part of that is the depth of our team. We press after every made basket. It's not a wild helter-skelter press. It's more of a containment press that we hope wears opponents down over the course of the game. And then our term is the last 8 or 10 minutes of the game, we want to take their legs. And I think our depth has certainly been very beneficial for us in doing that. But when you have fresh bodies out there, we have good length, we have good athleticism, good quickness. And I think when you have bodies out there that are fresh and they're playing hard, you're going to wear some people down. And fortunately, we've been able to do that this year.
Yeah, and you've got such a solid group of scorers, 5 players averaging from 9.4 to 11.1 points. Then the next 4 or 6.3 is 7.6. So the depth is proven right there on the offensive side again with those points. Derek Butler and Dayton Albee are your 2 top scorers as they both find shots, and Albee is one of your top 3-point shooters.
Well, I think when you look at what the numbers you just mentioned, we basically have 5 guys in double figures. And anytime I've been a head coach and we've had 4 or 5 guys in double figures, that usually lends itself to having a good team. And I think that's the case this year. I go back my first year, the kid that signed at Florida State, Naheem McLeod, averaged like 5 points a game. Now he's 7'3", so he did some other things. But my point guard, Jaden Zachary, signed at Boston College, and he averaged just over 10 points a game. So we've never had in my 3 years a guy that's averaged 20, 22, 24 points a game. We've always done it with good balance and again, guys that play the right way. Any of those 5 guys that are averaging basically 10 a game have all had games of 18 or 20 points this season. So they're more than capable. But again, I think that the balance and the unselfishness, first of all, starts with our players being willing to play that way. And points of emphasis within our program. It doesn't matter who gets the buckets. Coaches at the Division I level want to sign players that have won, know how to win, come from winning programs, and our program has done that the last few years. So you don't have to score a lot of points to garner recognition, and I think that'll be the case again for those 4 or 5 guys you mentioned, and even a couple of those guys that come off the bench are getting Division I offers already.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Jamil Safadine. He's a
Ju-
6'6", 6'7". He can really play the 1 through the 3. He's from Denver, Colorado. I happen to know about him because a former graduate assistant for Kermit Davis and I, when we were at Middle Tennessee together, was his workout guy out in Denver. And he
Oh,
called
wow.
me about him. We brought him in for a visit and really liked him. He was a big part of our Final Four team a year ago. And then this year, he's a multi-talented guy. He can really shoot it. He has deceptive athleticism. He can get to the rim and draw fouls. He's probably our best passer. I'd like for him to rebound it a little bit better. He's heard that from me a time or two, but he does a lot of other good things, and he's a well-rounded player. He's another guy that's a mid-major Division I kid, and he's averaging 9 or 10 a game, but on a lot of teams, he could go get 16 or 18 a night.
Coach, you have a lot of solid players at those guard positions. Is this something that you might proliferate into a 5-guard offense at some points in a game?
Well, you would like to do that offensively because obviously you'd have some mismatches at the other end of the floor, but then defending and rebounding always becomes an issue. Now, there have been games this year where we went 4 combo guards or point guards out there with one big guy. And again, you worry about rebounding the ball and being able to limit teams' second and third shot opportunities. But we do have a team. Even with our one big guy, JT Warren, when he's at the 5, he's really more of a combo forward. So when we play those 4 smaller guys and JT together, you kind of are going with basically a 4-guard, 1 forward alignment. And it's hard to guard. That team's dangerous offensively.
Last thing, Coach, obviously we're looking at the Panhandle Conference tournament. The first thing, though, the matchup with Tallahassee Saturday, then the tournament, then the junior college tournament structure. Just talk a little bit about that and how we can follow you guys throughout.
Yeah, how it works. We have 1 game remaining. We've already clinched at least a share of the Panhandle Conference, like I mentioned, for the 3rd straight season. If Tallahassee were to beat us over there on Saturday, we've split with them on the season thus far, then they would also have a share of the Panhandle Conference. And then we go into the state tournament, and we go into the state tournament, and it's the top 8 teams in the state get to go. And again, the last 2 seasons, we've been fortunate and won that. But if you don't win it, there's also nowadays in the national tournament 8 at-large teams that get an at-large berth. So I think we sit in pretty good shape. We're 3rd in the country. We're number 1 in the Massey rankings, which is the computer poll. We're 27-2. We have 25 or 26 Division I wins in junior college. So I think even if we happen to get beat in the state tournament, we'll get an at-large berth. Of course, there's never any guarantees, as we found out at Southern Miss years ago, right? But I do think this team will get to Hutch one way or another. And then once you get there, you're one of 24 teams, so you got a legit chance. And like I said, we've been right there for 2 straight years. And if we're fortunate enough to get back to Hutch, we want to finish the job this season.
Coach Donnie Tyndall and Chipola, the Indians, getting ready to go into the postseason with at least a 27-win record. Coach, it's great talking to you, and I wish you the best all the way through.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I'm glad you're doing well. I know you fought some health stuff a while back, and we've stayed in touch, but you look great, man. I'm glad you're doing well, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I really do.